I'm KaeLyn Rich, and today I'm the face of America. Hi, I'm KaeLyn Rich. I am the author of Girls Resist, a guide to activism, leadership, and starting a revolution. I'm a writer, I'm an organizer, I also work for the ACLU of New York. And I'm all of those things. So I was born in South Korea, a place I would love to go back to. I've never been back. I came to America at the age of 17 months through transnational and also transracial adoption. So I grew up in this really rural area of Western New York, which is like the other side. So like Manhattan's on this side, and I was on like as far as you can get in the other direction, like by Lake Erie, in this tiny little town with one blinking stoplight that is now just a four-way stop, or no, it's a two-way stop. It's just like on a county route. That's where I grew up. My mom was Swedish German, my dad was Italian. And I was like kind of the only person of color, definitely the only Asian kid in my town and in my school as well. So I grew up with this really early experience of having to identify as other or as different. And I think that really formed who I am. So like from a very early age, I felt outside of the norm. And then as I got older and realized that I'm all these other things too, that I'm queer, that I'm a feminist, that I have all these other identities, that sort of like early experience of being different and having to learn to be proud of myself and kind of like grappling with shame about being different at a young age and coming out on the other side of that has really, I think, positioned me both to write this book and to sort of be the person I am today. Everywhere I've gone to talk about this book, I've met young women and young people who might not identify as women, but identify as non-binary or not as old white men, basically, who are excited to one day run for office, to get involved in politics. Girls are they're aware of what's going on in the world. Even more than my generation, young girls today are super involved in their communities. They watch the news, they are on social media, they're aware of everything that's wrong in the world, and I really believe that young people, and especially young people of diverse identities, are going to lead us into that future. So it's not that girls need to resist more than boys in this world. It's more that girls have a lot to resist about, and a lot of the manuals for resistance or for doing activism aren't really written with girls in mind. We live in a world where boys have the luxury of living in a world where everything is kind of for them. It just, it's assumed that it's for them, and girls don't have that same privilege. So Girls Resist is really about taking those tools that are for everybody, but really putting them in the frame of something that is specifically and genuinely for people who don't always see themselves represented in activism. So of course, Asian people experience racism. And everyone's experience is really unique and different. I wouldn't want to compare myself to other marginalized identities, marginalized racial identities. Because even within Asian communities, sometimes there can be racism towards other people, like towards Black people or towards Latinx people. Sometimes white people don't know that even in communities where people of color are, sometimes there can be like racism within those communities. Not necessarily against white people. I'm not talking about so-called reverse racism, which isn't really a thing. But sometimes marginalized folks can like deal with trauma in different ways and take it out on each other. So all of that said, yes, when we talk about race in America, we're usually talking about Black and Latinx people, and there's nothing wrong with that because they really do suffer trauma in America. Asian people do too, and it's sometimes in a more quiet way, and I think that has to do with honestly how dominant culture sees us, how in terms of race, white dominant culture sees us as non-threatening in some ways, which is actually very kind of offensive, right? That it takes away the power of Asian people. So they see Asian women as weak and submissive, and Asian men as like effeminate and not masculine as well, which when you really think about it, is about like feminizing Asian people, and it's about devaluing femininity. So like not only are they saying you're more effeminate or you're more submissive, they're also saying being more feminine means you lack power or you lack agency. So I think that's why maybe you don't hear about it as much, or because it happens in this like more subversive way. It's not like they're saying, oh, all Asian people are criminals or all Asian people are dangerous or drug dealers like they do about some Black and Latinx people. But what they say about us is kind of like, we don't matter. Like our voices aren't important to the conversation, and we're not a threat to the dominant society, which of course is not true. I wrote this book for girls, and in the broadest definition of that word. So whether you're cisgender, whether you're transgender, whether you're non-binary and also sort of identify with girlhood in some way as a demigirl, or many other words or identities you could use for yourself. But I wrote it for people basically who weren't boys, who didn't have that sense of like, oh, all of this information is for me. What I really want girls to take away is the idea that they have individual power to fight back against systemic oppression, to fight against like those big powers, those big things that feel out of reach, whether that is in your community or in your school, or even if we're talking about the country or the world. I think young people and young women have always been at the front of our social justice movements. They've always been there. They just haven't gotten the credit in history. And this book is about giving people the tools, because that history of mentorship, that history of like training and passing down information to girls about women or from women just hasn't happened. And so this is really me like saying, here are the tools, whether that's how to do a campaign, how to write a press release, how to work with the media, how to get your message out, how to fundraise, like really basic things. It's also about getting that information out about how we do this work in a way that's intersectional, how do we take care of ourselves and each other as we do it, because it's hard and it can be traumatic when you're already a marginalized person doing activist work. You're doing a lot of emotional labor and actual labor. So it's all of those things sort of wrapped up in a bundle. And to me, it's really a gift. It's not that I necessarily want them to take any one thing away so much as their own power. I want them to, whether they're already leading activist work, and many girls are, or they're new to it, I want them to walk away feeling like, I have the tools to make a difference. And I don't tell people in the book like what to do or what they should be doing. That's really up to the reader to decide what's important to them and what change they want to make in the world. And I hope they come out on the other end of the book feeling equipped to do that.